Now, 20 more suspects were arrested at the anti-corruption court on Monday in Kenya to face charges over the theft of nearly $100 million at the National Youth Service. The suspects, who are before Chief Magistrate Douglas Ogoti, face multiple charges, among which are the abuse of office and willful failure to comply with applicable procedures. In total, 43 persons have so far now been charged over the scam. Barbara.
Exactly, Jerry. But even if President Kenyatta seems determined, there is one question Kenyans are asking themselves. How far would the government go, and especially how far would justice go? Because dozens of corruption cases have been exposed by the Kenyan media in recent years, and there have been very few convictions. Just a reminder, in 2017, Kenya was ranked 143rd out of 180 in Transparency International's annual ranking on corruption worldwide.
Alvin Mosioma is the Executive Director of the Tax Justice Network Africa. He joins us now on the program. Welcome to the program, Alvin. You know, I really want us to talk first about corruption in Africa. An AU report says Africa loses over $192 billion every year to corruption and also illicit financial flows. The National Youth Service scandal in Kenya that we are talking about this morning serves as a classic example of this. Alvin, can corruption be fought in Africa, especially seeing that monies meant for development are being lost?
Definitely, I think it's possible to tackle corruption. The question if we can end it is a difficult one to answer, because corruption exists everywhere, not just in Africa. But I think that the kind of pervasive corruption that we are experiencing in the continent can be tackled. It can be reduced. It can be reduced in general. But for that, I think the biggest challenge that we have is a question of political will. We find that the corruption, we tend to focus largely on individuals. We focus on the figures of the amounts of money that has been stolen, but at that point we are missing the big picture, and the big picture is the system that allows that corruption to happen. Either the system that has been deliberately put in place to allow that to happen. If you look at, for example, the corruption case in Kenya, it did not happen because somebody walked into the central bank and carried away the money, but it's because somebody exploited the loopholes in the system, the government procurement system, to be able to loot those amounts of money. So I think looking at the systemic character of corruption, which has got both a demand side and a supply side of it, it has got a huge political dimension to it.
And it doesn't make it any easier that many of the culprits that we are talking about are important people in power, does it?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. It makes it even more difficult, of course, because there is what you can call the revolving door concept, which is prevailing in all sectors, in all countries generally, where you find people moving in from the private sector into politics and from politics back to the private sector. This is one of the root causes, that there's no clear distinction between where public service starts and where private business ends, and where. So this kind of revolving door concept makes corruption uprooted more difficult.
Alvin, governments tend to run for the smaller fish, using scapegoats and intimidation against those seeking to expose the big fish. Do you think that the Kenyan society is ready to risk it all this time around for this fight?
Well, I think that the problem in Kenya particularly is that our corrupt system goes right on the top. It starts right on the top. It is a problem, as I was saying earlier, that is very systemic. It goes up to the top in terms of the top government echelons, from the presidency downward, and therefore the will to fight that. Because if you now start really digging deeper with the people you find that are involved in those corruption scandals, are people that are either very close to the president, they could be family members of the president, as we have had this case, particularly when you look at the first case of the NYS scandal, involved people that were very close to the presidency and close relatives and friends of the president. So that makes even the commitment of the political class, the government of Kenya to tackle that corruption very in doubt.